Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just did a little bit of an update on all the hinge players as I see it in the Big Ten. A ton of quarterbacks on that list up towards the top of the conference because frankly those are really the only teams that I see having a shot to win this conference. But would love to see someone prove me wrong on that. But let's get into the last segment here and let's break down some of the big time headlines that we just didn't quite have a chance to get to throughout the week. And I want to start with a very, very talented player down in Troy and Chris Lewis. He is expected to miss the 2024 season after undergoing cancer treatment. He was diagnosed back in December with osteosarcoma. He had a tumor on his femur, I believe, and had to be removed and has been going through treatment ever since. Obviously, hoping for him to get healthy and happy as quickly as possible and get back on the field. He says he very much intends to get back on the field the second he is cleared. And when you watch this kid play football, it is really special. He does so many things that are just out of this world incredible, including that catch against Kansas State. He was really, really remarkable, ranked, I believe, 16th nationally in touchdowns overall, regardless of the position, because that's usually one that's dominated by running backs. This was a guy that found his way into the end zone plenty. After transferring over from Kentucky, after a couple of not so great years at Kentucky or just not playing too much at Kentucky, found his way down to Troy and has done just an incredible job. He is going to stick around the team. He's going to be a student assistant and will just be a remarkable resource for those players and for all of the receivers in that room because this is one of the best players in the Sun Belt. This is one of the best receivers in the entire country and one of my favorite players in the country. So obviously very much want him to get healthy and happy and back on the football field as quickly as possible because this is a really special player, and I know for a fact that's where he wants to be on the football field. So obviously really, really upsetting news for Troy and their fan base, but just hoping for him to get healthy and get back on the football field and get back there out with his teammates. But it'll be a really, really interesting thing to watch. Will definitely be something that will be transformative for Troy for a number of different reasons. Other wide receivers will have to step up, but you have a new coach that can kind of add to that a little bit. So that's a fun little development there. But let's move on to Jeff Tedford. He has stepped down from Fresno State amid health concerns. This is obviously something that happened back in 2019 when he was the head coach of Fresno State, so this is the second time that this has come around. Obviously a very tough headline to see. This is someone that is just beloved across every single person in college football world, whether it's media, coaches, players, it does not matter. This guy is someone that everyone speaks remarkably glowingly about and did a really, really good job at Fresno State while he was there in the two different stints. He went 45 and 22 overall during his time at Fresno State and 19 and 8 during his last couple of years. So was a remarkable head coach, really set that program up for a very, very good next little bit, but he's passing the torch over to Tim Skipper for this year. The linebackers coach, assistant head coach on the team is now the interim coach, and it'll be really interesting to watch that develop. He's been someone that played linebacker at Fresno State, so absolutely loves this school, is definitely someone that I think, frankly, they would love to hire at the end of the year if he gives them a good enough reason to. So it's kind of interesting whenever you have a full year interim. It happened over at Northwestern under very different circumstances last year, but David Braun was able to get that job at the end of the year because it's an audition, it's an interview throughout every single Saturday that you play. So it'll be really interesting to watch that develop. Another name to watch here is Arizona State OC Marcus Arroyo. He was at UNLV as the head coach and didn't necessarily do all that well, was 7 and 20 when he was there, but got better every single year and has been learning from Kenny Dillingham, and that's one of the best offensive minds in the game. So it will definitely be a very interesting thing to watch, but overall, just very much hoping that Jeff Tedford and his family are able to deal with this, get on the other side of this, and likely is fully retired from the game at this point if I had to imagine. But regardless, would love to have this guy around the game in any capacity, whether that's media or as a analyst, whatever have you. I think everyone agrees that college football with Jeff Tedford is just a better thing. So hoping that he gets healthy as quickly as possible and maybe gets back to at least being around college football. But then let's move on to Cormani McClain. There's some very interesting headlines that came out this past week around him saying he had been dismissed from the Florida football team. That was not the case. There was definitely some very, very interesting things that came out from this, and Billy Napier kind of quieted that, saying it was kind of blown out of proportion. He's doing fine. There's a lot of things. He's well aware of his history is one thing that he said. So it seems like this guy's trying to work, and he's trying to do the right things, and obviously there are some things that precede him. Dion had some not so great things to say about him when he was at Colorado, not being as committed as he should be, not being as locked in on film rooms and being late to meetings, that type of thing. So obviously there are some things that come with this kid. There's no two ways about that. But there was a little bit of frustration in my point of view from this, just because this kid is trying. It's very obvious to me. Billy Napier says it, and every coach in that locker room says it, that this kid is trying to become a little bit better in those aspects, is trying to be a little bit more attentive and try to be a little bit more committed to his craft. And it's a little bit frustrating when you see a headline like this come out and it not end up being true, because it just kind of adds to this lore around this kid that, he didn't earn. He didn't get knocked off the Florida football team. He didn't get kicked off that team. And, reporting that, whether it's true or not, and whether you redact that or not going on, it does change the way that some people look at him. So I think that's kind of just upsetting more than anything else. It was just kind of frustrating for me, because it feels like a kid that's still very young. It's still very early on in his career, and he's going to have some mistakes, and he's trying to learn from those mistakes. And, adding to this by saying, well, he just got kicked off the new team that he's been on for 2 months, I don't think necessarily helps him out by any means. So I don't necessarily love it. I understand people get false rumors and everything, but when it's about a kid that has had some of the troubles that Cormani McClain has had and is getting kicked off a team, I just think they should go through a little bit more checking before they put that out in the world. But that was just kind of a side point that I had just a little bit of beef with throughout this week. But finally, the UFL draft happened this week, and obviously the NFL is where a lot of these guys want to end up, but there's some other options, and playing professional football is obviously the end goal for all these guys. So this is a way to do it, and it's very, very cool for a lot of these guys. So I want to break down 4 guys that were picked that are big-time college football players, and definitely guys that you will know the name of. Let's start with Jason Bean. He was the quarterback at Kansas, one of the guys that took over for Jalen Daniels when a lot of these injuries happened, and played really good football in a lot of different ways. Is obviously more of a runner than a passer in a lot of different ways, but last year, if you were watching the UFL at all, you saw Adrian Martinez just do ridiculous things on the ground and win that MVP. So maybe that's the way for Jason Bean. He is now a Memphis showboat, and definitely will be a very interesting thing to watch. Cannot wait to see this guy on the football field this spring. But moving on here, Kalen DeLoach got picked up by the Arlington Renegades. He had a play, probably the play of the year, if I'm being totally honest, for Florida State against Clemson, where he just absolutely knocked Cade Klubnik and jarred that ball loose, and it changed that game overnight, really. It totally flipped that game on its head and pretty much won Florida State the game. But a very, very talented player that is going to be really, really fun to watch wherever he ends up going forward. Cody Schrader was someone that was picked up by the Arlington Battlehawks, a huge pickup, and this is a guy that he's going to live in Missouri lore forever just because of what he was able to pull off, coming from a community college not too far down the road and being able to lead Missouri to what it was a really remarkable season last year. So very cool that he's getting a shot at the next level, wherever that is. And then Drake Stoops was drafted in the 10th round of this draft, but he was drafted to his father's team. Bob Stoops, if you haven't heard, has been coaching the Arlington Renegades for the past couple of years, and he got a shot to coach his son, and that's a very cool moment for them. Obviously, there were some people yelling nepotism and such. This is a very good football player. This is someone that can really run routes very well and absolutely will add to this team. So whether it's nepotism or not, they're getting a good football player. So definitely a very, very cool moment for all of those guys. Most of those guys are signed with NFL teams right now as undrafted free agents. So some of this will depend on, do they make the 53-man roster, do they not? But if I had to imagine, I would say those 4 people will not make the 53-man roster, at least this time around. Maybe they make the practice squad and kind of work their way up, but you could see them in the UFL this time next year, and would be very, very cool to watch all those guys, because it just gives those guys that you really loved watching in college football another chance to play professional football, which is always a really cool thing, whether it's the NFL or the UFL or the AFL. I don't care. As long as you get a chance to play the sport that you love for as long as you can, that's the end goal for all of these kids. So definitely a really cool moment for all of them. But that'll do it for this edition of the GSMC College Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It does make a huge difference for us. Also, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, all of the social pages for all of the content and updates you could possibly need. We just have really incredible people doing really good work across every single sport you could possibly want. So anything you need in the world of sports, come on over to GSMC and we have you totally covered. But I'll see you guys on Monday. Thank you once again for listening.